You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and I am the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com and at Yahoo Sports Australia. And you can find me on Twitter as always at redrock_bball and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. What we're doing today for the first time this year is looking at the top ranked players so far in fantasy basketball. We're going to go through the top 18 players. They are on a per game basis. For 8 category leagues, this is still applicable to 9 category leagues. It's not for points leagues. Maybe I will just give you a quick rundown of the top 10 in points leagues at the end of this show. But this is, and I'm not going to go into my thoughts on 8 versus 9 cat. I think 9 cat is fine to play. I also don't think you should factor turnovers in when looking at value. This is on a, again, per game basis over the last 2 weeks. So we're looking at more recent performances. Who are the top 18 players over that time frame? Michael Bolton.
Let's get to it.
Let's get to it indeed. The number one player, no shock here. This is probably going to be the number one player when all is said and done. It's Jim Hardin over the past 7 games. He's averaging 39, 6, and 8 with 2 steals, over 5 threes, and shooting 43% from the field and 84 from the line on almost 15 attempts. He is miles and miles above of the next guy on this list. I think he can still beat, he can maybe he averages 40 points a game this year. It's not actually crazy. The arrival of Russell Westbrook hasn't mattered. He is an absolutely massive fantasy beast. We know this. He's a guy that I still advocated to be the number one pick in drafts. Him and Towns were the 2 guys I had at the top. Towns is not quite at the top at this point. But Hardin is just and I think at this point he just has to be the number one guy, number one pick in fantasy drafts until he isn't. And I think making him your number one pick in pretty much any league, at some point he's not going to be, but for now we just keep on doing it at least the next 2 or 3 seasons. He has been amazing. At number 2, a big surprise is Damian Lillard. In the last 7 games, he is playing an absolute shit ton of minutes, the most minutes out of anybody, 39 minutes a game and averaging 31 points. Over 4 threes, 4 rebounds, 6.4 assists, and 1.1 steals. So why is Lillard, the guy that was the consensus number 7 pick, all the way up at number 2 here? Well, because he's shooting 51% from the field. And when you go from like a low to mid 40s in field goal percentage, up to over 50, from a decent negative up to a positive, that pushes you up those 5 or 6 spots. So there is reason to believe that Lillard's numbers will drop. He's shooting 42% from 3. Maybe that can stick. That's not outrageous. 61% from 2. That's probably unlikely for him to be able to keep up. So there is some element of regression most likely coming from Damian Lillard in these next couple of weeks and months. At number 3, Yanni Antetokounmpo of the Milwaukee Bucks. He was that guy that was in that top 5 discussion. Probably the player that I think he was the guy I had at number 4 heading in. Over the last 6 games, he's playing 34 minutes a game, so that's up from where he was last year. The Bucks aren't quite firing on as many cylinders as they were last year. Averaging 34 points with 15 boards and 6 assists. That is excellent. 1.3 steals, 1.5 blocks. 61% from the field. Unfortunately, just 69% from the line.
Giggity.
Giggity indeed. So that is what's keeping him down. And if that was at a level commensurate with, say, Hardin and Lillard, well, he would, if he was shooting average free throws, he would be number 2. He would be ahead of Lillard, so he'd be right up there. He's also hitting 1.7 threes per game at 40%. Now, that's probably not going to stick, but the fact that he's attempting threes and hitting them is going to be able to sustain him, I believe, in that top 3 or 4 discussion for most of the season. So Yanni comes in at number 3. I guess this is a surprise when we look at what happened. Those guys, Hardin, Lillard, and Antetokounmpo, they were all projected to be top 7 guys at the start of the season. Luka Doncic was not. He was a guy that I thought could be a top 20 sort of a player around that zone, a second-round pick. Over the last 2 weeks, he's the 4th-ranked player. 30.5 points a game, 3 triples, 11 rebounds, 11 assists. The 0.3 steals, so there's still room to improve there. But what has really changed is 50% from the field and 91% from the line on 7.5 attempts. I don't think he sticks as a 91% free throw shooter, but 80 is definitely in play here for Doncic. So that can stick there. I'm not sure that he can be a 62% 2-point shooter. Maybe that drops off. 34 from 3 is absolutely possible, and that could actually improve. So Doncic, to me, is a top 10 guy going forward. he is a top 10 guy until the year 2029, most likely. Look, this is who he is. Can he be top 5 next year? Will he be in that discussion ahead of Steph? I reckon there's a distinct possibility that he is in that area. Look, massive start, and that's all we needed for him to do. We talked about it. Efficiency. Get the percentages up, and everything else will come. The usage is up. He is absolutely dominant at the moment, and he is your 4th ranked player. At number 5, Andre Drummond. Over the past 7 games, he's averaging 19 and 16. 4 assists, 2 steals, and 2.3 blocks on 53 and 77%. Remember those days when Drummond was a sub 40% free throw shooter? Well, we're not there yet. I'm not sure I'm ready to buy him as a 77% shooter, but still in that 65 to 70 type zone. The other thing that is going to happen, and it will happen, I guarantee you, these assists are going to drop. 4 assists per game over these past 7 games. When Griffin reestablishes himself, we'll be back to 2 assists, 1.5 assists perhaps. It will drop off significantly, so your sell high window is still marginally open for Drummo, but it is going to close off pretty quickly. The next bloke that comes in at number 6, D'Angelo Russell of the Golden State Warriors. His last 5 games, 33 points, 4 triples, 4 rebounds, 7 assists, and 1.4 steals, and doing it efficiently. 48 from the field and 85 from the line on 8 attempts. There's a couple of things that really stand out there. Yes, the 33 points are high, but this is a guy that never got to the line this much, 8 attempts a game, and didn't shoot 85%. If those 2 things keep up, and it's a possibility, then he could be a top 20 guy from here on out. I think top 30 is almost a guarantee for Russell at this point. Top 20 is a real possibility. He is not a sell high because we have got 3 months more of this. So selling a guy at this spot when he could be a top 10 guy for the next 3 months. That's a possibility. Putting up big numbers, carrying a large load.
Giggity.
Usage of 38% is massive, so he is putting up big numbers with Curry out. Next up, Anthony Davis at number 7. He's averaging 25 and 9, 3 blocks, 52 and 88. Strong numbers. I don't think you can expect too much more from Davis. Some of those performers ahead of him, Drummond, Russell, Lillard, maybe even Doncic, could all fall back, whereas what Davis is doing is entirely sustainable, and he's going to be in this discussion all season. Another guy that is a bit of a surprise in this top 9 here, and that is Trey Young, averaging 29, 4 and 10 with 2 steals, 44 and 80% shooting. 4 threes a game. We talked about him as that back-end first-round top 15 sort of a player. He's doing that. He's exceeding that. Again, like Doncic, I don't think he's really escaping the first round at any point in the next 10 years. The assists, those steals are buoying his value. So if they go from 2 a game down to 1 a game, then he goes back into that 14-15 zone, which I think is fair enough. But everything else from what Young is doing is totally sustainable, especially with Collins out for these next 6 weeks or 5 weeks left. The usage is up, so maybe he does drop off there, but Young has been everything we would have hoped for and even more. At number 9, this is a surprise to me, Kemba Walker, 25 points, 5 threes, 5 rebounds, 5 assists on 44 and 94%, a usage of 28%, which is not the same level as where it was in Charlotte. It is a little bit down from there, but still, those numbers are really impressive from Walker. The 5 rebounds especially is good, and 5 threes a game. That's what's really buoying his value. That is his number 1 fantasy category. Over the last 2 weeks is 5 triples per game. If that goes back to 3 triples per game, then a decent enough drop-off comes there. But he has been really, really strong as a member of the Boston Celtics, and surprising me by being as high as he is at the current stage. Let's move on to the next list of players in the rest of this top 18. At number 10, Devin Booker of the Phoenix Suns. And like Anthony Davis, most of what he's doing is sustainable. The 62% shooting probably isn't. 67% on threes, 61% on twos. That's probably not going to stick. 26 points, 5.6 assists. He's doing it only on 27% usage. So there is room for him to actually get better in those areas. Hasn't missed a free throw, attempting 4.6 a game over these last 5 games. Booker has been fantastic so far this season, and the Suns obviously exceeding everyone's expectations, including all Suns fans, I'm guessing. Number 11, the fun guy, Kawhi Leonard.
I'm a fun guy.
5 games, 27 points, 11 rebounds, 5 assists, a career high, 2.4 steals, and he is doing it while shooting only 39%. So if that comes back up to 45, 46, 47, he can be better than this. Of course, the injury / knee issue / load management is always going to be frustrating, but on a per game basis, he's going to be a top 10 player. We haven't seen how the interaction with Paul George works yet, so we're still got to wait for that to see how that impacts it, but on a per game basis, he is going to be a first round player for the rest of the year, you would guess. Couple of guys in these top 18 players that are injured. One of those is number 12, Kyle Lowry, 22 and 6 with a steal a game, 55% shooting. He is going to obviously fall out of these ranks as he's out. He was a great sell high option. You can't do that now because he's injured, and that's exactly why you wanted to sell him high. At number 13, Karl Anthony Towns. Townsy, averaging 25 and 12, 1.4 blocks. But the reason he is here and not up in that top 5, top 6 is because he's shooting just 44% over these 5 games, including only 32% from 3. This guy has been a consistent 40% three-point shooter. Bump all that back up, and he rises in these rankings pretty quickly. The next guy we look at, Jimmy Butler at number 14.
Because he's my butler.
19, 6 and 7 with 2.7 steals. We thought that he'd have the ball in his hands a lot. He does. His usage still isn't that high, but those assists and those steals are keeping him up. And if he starts getting that usage closer to 30, we're going to be looking at a bloke who really could push into the top 12, top 10 for the rest of the year. Butler has been really strong to start this season and really asserting himself on this Miami team. Next up, we're looking at number 15, Joel Embiid, 23 and 14 with 3 assists and almost 2 blocks. But like Towns, his field goal percentage is keeping him back 43% from the field. And it's not because of poor three-point shooting, because he's hitting 40% of those. He's hitting only 44% of 2. So there obviously is room for him to get significantly better than that. 23 and 14, he could be a 27 and 14 guy with 2 blocks, and that would jump him up those rankings. Down to the last 3 here that we're going to look at, and number 16 is a massive surprise. Andy Wiggins at number 16 in the last 2 weeks, averaging 29 points per game on 30% usage, shooting 51% from the field and 69% from the line.
Giggity.
But 5 rebounds, 5 assists, 1.4 blocks. There's a lot of skepticism that those blocks can keep up, but watching him play, there's no reason the assists and the rebounds can't stick at their level. The 1 steal per game, the 3 threes per game, his shot selection's better. He looks a completely different player. Ryan Saunders has gotten through to him, and he is really developing. Now, he is going to be a top 100 points league guy. He was always going to be that player. He's going to be, I think, a top 100 categories guy. Whether he can be a top 16 player moving forward, I have my doubts, but he's putting up numbers that would make you think that, or playing the way that make you think, well, maybe he can keep doing it. So Wiggins, really, really good at the moment. Number 17 is Gordon Haywood, who over those 4 games before he broke his hand was shooting 63% from the field. That was always going to drop, but the 5 assists, the 7 rebounds, that was really encouraging. So when we look at him, I think he could be a top 50 guy per game when he comes back. So when you're making that decision to drop, if you've got Haywood and LeVert, like LeVert's the clear drop there out of those guys. Haywood has significantly more production and upside, I think, for the rest of the season. So he is only going to be out those 6 weeks. It's not great. It's 16 games more, most likely for Haywood, and it is a tough pill to swallow, but he has been fantastic and will likely continue to be good when he comes back. And the last guy in my top 18,
LeBron James.
24, 9, and 12. The reason he's down here is because he's 47% from the field and 61% from the line. He started off the year really shooting well from the free throw line. That's dropped off. Again, we just have to assume he's not going to be a good free throw shooter. So when that field goal percentage normalizes, which likely it will, then he jumps back up these numbers. But that is your top 18. The last couple of guys missing out, Kyrie Irving at 19 and Chris Paul at number 20. I'm not including Jeremy Lamb. Actually, no, screw it. Jeremy Lamb comes in at number 20. He only played the 3 games. He averaged 17 and 7 with 1.7 steals and 1.3 blocks. And then Paul at 21, Vucevic at 22, Sabonis at 23, and John Isaac at 24. So some interesting names there. I will give you guys just a quick ranking of the top points league players in that time as well, just to satisfy you points league guys. The top guys there: Antetokounmpo, Hardin, Doncic, LeBron, Drummond, Russell, Leonard, Davis, Trey Young, Karl Anthony Towns, Damian Lillard, and Andrew Wiggins. They are your top points league performers, top 12 points league performers over the last 2 weeks. That'll do it for me today, guys. Subscribe, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and on YouTube. Follow me on Twitter at redrock_bball and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. I'll be back tonight with another show. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.